On day 23 of our European tour, October 2009, we headed from Venice to Vienna, and we headed north towards the Italian-Austrian border, and we passed through the mighty Dolomites. They're a mountain structure that you can hardly see because of the fog, and this is the Italian side of the border, and on the other side they talk about Tagliamento River is the main water system in the northern Italy area, and it's nestled in between some beautiful mountains, and of course the freeway we travelled along was built parallel to the river and the mountains in the valleys. In amongst these mountains was a whole heap of these tunnels that went through large chunks of underneath the mountains, and here's a picture of that freeway alongside the river and small towns on the way up. And one thing I noticed on the way up is the roofs on most of the houses were different, and they were obviously for the snow, so that the snow would slide off easier. An absolutely gorgeous photograph of a mountain in the distance through all the green mountains and valleys of northern Italy. So then we crossed over into Austria through the toll gates and through more tunnels towards a town called Village, which is pretty much the first town after you cross over the border. And the mountain region in that area was Village Alps. Then the bus driver stopped for a break, and it was at a Suderast hotel and rest stop, and we sat down to a lovely view of the Village Alps, and here's my lovely wife telling me a story of some kind with the Alps in the background. And then we had, of course, a selfie together by one of the other members of the tour group, and in the backyard of the restaurant area was this clock tower, and it wasn't until we got up close to it that we realised that the clock was quite different and seemed to be very old, and the style was reminiscent of Austria and Switzerland. Then we started to see these buildings with steeples all over Austria, and I thought this was sort of a castle, but it turned out to be part of the village town hall or church. And I see the rolling landscape of the grazing hills and farmland. Then we got to the outskirts of the city of Vienna, and some video images of the really old style buildings that are common in this town. Most of these buildings are in a Barocco style, and they were built between the 17th and 18th century. Not saying that all of them are, but the design is definitely around that period, the Barocco period.
On the right hand side you see this is the main entrance of Vienna, the State Opera. Well, here next to the Opera House you'll see the statue of Goethe, the most famous poet of our German language. And there she is, Maria Theresa, sitting on the throne, surrounded by her ministers, the field marshals on the horses.
Maria Theresa was the ruler of the Habsburg dominions between 1740 and her death in 1780. On either side of the Maria Theresa Plaza or square were two museums, one being the Museum of Natural History and the other the Museum of Fine Arts. They are matching structures or identical buildings. The Museum of Natural History is supposedly the most important museum in the world, and it was established between 1872 and 1889. Likewise, the Museum of Fine Arts was built in the same period, and it houses mostly the Habsburg collection of fine armour and portraits and obviously other art. Then we walk through these gates into Hero Square, which is a public square in front of the Hofburg Palace, and there are some statues of Archduke Charles and also Prince Eugene statue, both war heroes from the Napoleonic War and the Turkish conflict. There's also memorials somewhere there for the fallen soldiers of the First World War and the Second World War. Here's an image of the Hofburg Palace itself and our tour group looking around and taking photos, of course. And here's the image of Prince Eugene statue, and we have a selfie of my wife and myself. Then we have a photograph of Archduke Charles statue and this fantastic looking tour bus in front of it. Just near the Hofburg Castle was a Hotberg Gardens and a statue to Mozart the composer, and this statue was built in 1953 and dedicated to Wolfgang Mozart, who lived until 1791. Of course, Mozart wrote a lot of music, but he also wrote letters, as well as suffering from a lot of medical conditions as well. This was a very beautiful statue or monument.
Justice. And this has been our parliament already at the time of Emperor Franz Joseph at the end of the monarchy. And since the year 1918, it is the parliament of the Republic. On the other side, on the right-hand side, one of the many beautiful parks that we have in Vienna. Vienna is a very green city. There are more than 700 public parks in Vienna. Lots of green areas.
There are 4 statues in the front of the Parliament building, as well as the Palace Athene fountain and 2 quadrus chariots being pulled by 4 horses, all representing the strength of Parliament. Then we drove past the Vienna Town Hall.
Town Hall and the Circus. The Town Hall is the one at the back. And you see one of the nice old cafes here at the corner.
During the siege of Vienna, and the Turks were repulsed, they left behind bags of coffee, and that's how coffee was introduced into Vienna. We had a bit of a look at one of these old trams, and the tram system in Vienna has been operating since 1865, and it's now a tourist tram. lots of these horse-drawn carriages in Vienna. They're called Facas. After going and listening to a Mozart orchestral performance in Vienna, we went for dinner and a show. So we sat and enjoyed some Austrian fare as well as some Austrian performers and musicians, and some of the people even went and had a bit of a dance. The video was produced by myself, and it's the end of another exciting video of day 23 of our European tour. We travelled from Venice to Vienna and did a day tour in Vienna.